Good morning, everybody, and welcome in this webinar based on modern workplace. So my name is Olivier Bertin, and I'm in charge of the pre-sales team specialized in apps, cloud services, and data center. So today I will share my time with two experts. So Francesco from Microsoft. Good morning, Francesco. And Ariane from Citrix. Good morning, Ariane. So workplace landscape contains a very large scope of challenges and technologies, but today we are going to make a special focus on our current challenges. So before the pandemic, it was easier to address them because everybody was located in our office, and every components, application, and data were easily accessible through our local network. But for sure, COVID situation is arrived and has changed our way of working, and also the way we address our business challenges. So most of our users are now outside of the company and connected from different locations, and sometimes from unmanaged device. Applications are in a SaaSified transformation, and our collaboration is changing. We also redefine our model of development, and all this situation create a complexity that is very difficult to solve if we use a traditional IT manner. So to provide a solution for remote and any device request, you could create vertical solution by using Citrix Virtual Desktop. And instead of using your on-premises resources, you could be more agile and start, by the way, your sustainable journey by using Citrix Cloud Services combined with Microsoft Azure and WVD. New business apps. You could redesign your current legacy business apps in order to use SaaS agile application. And for collaboration, most of our company are already on their way to migrate to Office 365. And to improve your development, you could use Azure DevOps combined with Microsoft WVD. So to integrate and give an access to all these features and vertical, you need to combine them by your own. And it could be sometimes really complex. Or you could use and build an optimized model that represents a clear, secure ADN of all these verticals by using Citrix services capabilities. And with the Citrix Universal Interface, you will be able to give an access to every user's profile from a single connection, and sure, serve them efficiently and securely the potential of all resources across private and public cloud.
All right, thank you very much, Olivier. Then I'll start, let's say, talking a little bit about the technical solution, which is Windows Virtual Desktop. But before starting in, let's say, talking about Windows Virtual Desktop into the details, I would like to introduce a little bit the concept of the Microsoft Cloud. So when we talk about Microsoft Cloud, we don't need to think only about Azure. We need to think about an ecosystem of solutions and of, let's say, technologies that sit on Microsoft Azure and use the power and the integration capabilities of Microsoft Azure to function properly. So if you think about GitHub or the Microsoft Power Platform or Microsoft 365, even LinkedIn or Dynamics 365, they all, let's say, use Microsoft Azure to be, let's say, ready for organizations and people all around the planet. And on top of that, all of these components that you see on the screen, they're all integrated by identity, security, management, and compliance, let's say, technologies and components that are developed by Microsoft, and then can, for example, your identity Active Directory, it can integrate with all of these services. So looking always at the globality of Microsoft Azure, we are talking about a cloud that is spread all over the world. We have more than 65 Azure regions, and a lot of more of Azure regions are, let's say, being developed right now. So in the next months, there is going to be many more, and they are all interconnected by more than 165,000 miles of fiber. That's a proprietary fiber of Microsoft. Microsoft Cloud, of course, then I would say gives organizations the possibility then to exploit the computing capabilities for ubiquitous computing, for decentralized computing. It gives the possibility to take control of over your data, because data can be, let's say, limited into the regional boundaries of the European Union, for example. Very recently, Microsoft has done a very big commitment on giving the possibility to organizations to have all the processing of the data and the data residence in the European Union without that data ever leaving the European Union boundaries. And then, of course, we can integrate with application development capabilities for developers, and of course, when we talk about trust, we talk about compliance. Microsoft Azure has more than 90 compliance offerings and certifications, and the security investment that Microsoft does every year is more than $1 billion worth. So moving to the cloud and to Azure in this case means really enhancing organizations' security posture. Then, of course, one of the very important, let's say, milestones and commitments to mention is the sustainability commitment of Microsoft. What you see here on the screen are the pillars of the commitment that Microsoft wants to reach by 2030, and it is to be carbon negative, so to not have any carbon footprint on Earth anymore from 2030 onwards, to be able to be water positive, so to actually, let's say, enhance the quantity of water in the world, and to do that through investments and through technology and through, let's say, attention to climate, zero waste. And of course, to build a planetary computer, since we are a technology organization. The planetary computer is going to be, let's say, finalized to better monitor, model, and manage the ecosystem of the world, and to protect the land that we use. So if we look a little bit at the timelines of these commitments, we started, let's say, in 2009. So we're talking about 12, 13 years ago, with the first goal, and we are looking forward to our commitments in the next years. So as we said, by 2030 to become carbon negative, and by 2050 to remove all the historical emissions of Microsoft since it was founded. So this means that our footprint in the world from a sustainability point of view is going to be zero. And from that moment onwards, we are going to actually make a positive impact in the carbon footprint. What does this mean for organizations that want to move to the cloud? It means that if you move your data center on Azure, if you move your services on Azure, if you adopt Azure services, if you use Microsoft technologies, your footprint is green, is not contributing to carbon emissions, because Azure and all the data centers and all the equipment that's used for our customers is using green energy and is part of these commitments that I've shown. So then, let's say, moving a little bit towards Windows Virtual Desktop. What is Windows Virtual Desktop? Windows Virtual Desktop is a Microsoft technology, a Microsoft solution that sits on Azure, as we've said, and empowers the organizations to work remotely. Basically, to give a virtual workstation to employees, and this virtual workstation can exploit all the benefits of Azure. So it means that we can exploit all the capabilities of the possibility to choose which virtual machines, how powerful that virtual machine is going to be, where that virtual machine is going to sit, whether that virtual machine is going to be shared through with more people or not, or it's going to be dedicated according to, of course, the use case. But in essence, it's a virtualization desktop infrastructure solution that works on Azure. What are the use cases that might bring an organization to adopt such a solution? As you see here in this slide, there can be several. Security and regulation, of course, because Azure is extremely secure and it has an enormous regulatory and compliance offerings and certifications. Of course, elasticity of the workforce, because it's extremely easy with Windows Virtual Desktop to add new, let's say, workstations, or to delete them, or to scale them up, scale them down, scale them out, or in, and etc. So elasticity, the needs of specific employees, because you can personalize or give specific, let's say, technological requirements to specific employees, and software installed on the machines, and workloads, of course. And of course, when we talk about sustainability and when we talk about cost reduction, there is going to be a cost reduction. First of all, because you don't need to purchase hardware that's extremely powerful and give them to the employees, and you don't need to renew it. So the depreciation of the devices, let's say, is going to contribute to that. The compute power needed is going to be less, because the compute power needed is going to be just the one that allows you to connect to the internet and to connect to the virtual desktop on Azure, but all the computation can happen on Azure. So there is no need for powerful machines, and there is consequently less computers, less devices, and less waste. So sustainability, and of course, people working from anywhere means also people moving less, and so less traffic, and etc. So this is a little bit an overview of what it means to adopt such a solution on Azure. Then let's go a little bit more into the solution itself. What it means, Windows Virtual Desktop, it means that we have these three pillars. We have Microsoft and Microsoft 365, Azure, and the solution, Windows Virtual Desktop, and they are completely integrate with one another. So this means that you can use all the advantages of Microsoft 365, for example, with Active Directory, with role-based access control, multi-factor authentication, or conditional access, and of course Azure, what we've just said before. And then the Windows Virtual Desktop solution has also incredible features, for example, the reverse connect technology, and you can, integrate with Active Directory, etc. But we will go a little bit more into the details in a minute. So what's the main difference between Windows Virtual Desktop and a virtualization infrastructure solution, let's say a legacy solution or a solution from the past? The main difference is that in the past, if you wanted to, of course, I mean, the fact that it's Microsoft managed, then it's, let's say, extremely easy to utilize and configure. It's advantage number one. And the advantages of the cloud and scalability, of course, these advantages stay. But the main difference is that in the past, you if you wanted to share one, let's say, machine with multiple users to save costs, or to, let's say, increase the efficiency of your computational capabilities, you needed to use Windows Server. If you wanted to use Windows 10, you needed to go to a single host, single session experience, so one machine per user. With Windows Virtual Desktop and only with Windows Virtual Desktop, it is possible to do that. Not only with the Windows Virtual Desktop, I mean only on Azure. It is possible to do that in Windows 10, and it's possible to do that, of course, in a multiple session environment. So this means that you can give the experience to the user to use their Windows 10 machine, but at the same time they can share the machine with other users in terms of computational power and resources. And of course, this gives you the possibility to increase the cost savings that you're going to have, of course. So if we zoom a little bit out and we have a look a little bit of what it means to have this virtualization experience, there are several advantages. First of all, you have a client that you can install on every platform of your choice. So on the top left, you have this client that gives you the possibility to connect to your environments. And that's something you install on your device. But even if you don't want to install it, or if you are somewhere else, you don't have your own device, you can always use the browser. Any browser will give you access to your virtualization environments. Then, of course, there are enhanced protocols. For example, you can use Windows Hello for authentication, or dynamically adapting bandwidth utilization for the streaming of the video, or for the streaming even of the multimedia content, etc. So this is going to, of course, adapt to your environment, to your bandwidth. One of the most important features, and I want to stress very much this one, is the containerization of the user profiles. What does it mean is that if you imagine each one of us, when we log into a machine, we have our user data, which is all the cache and all the let's say temporary files that we generate to make our machine function, all the login information and the cookies of the browsers. All of these things, they constitute our user profile. So for example, when I open my Outlook on my machine for my emails, I already have my emails visible there. I don't need to download them like I need to do when I open Outlook for the first time on a new computer, right? So in the past, let's say every time a user was connecting to a machine, the machine was not always the same, because of course there is a pool of machines for all the users of the organization, and sometimes according to when you connect and the conditions, you end up in a different machine, and then this user data is to be generated, is not there, and this generates a lot of, let's say, a poor experience for the users. So the containerization of the user's profiles is something that detaches the user profiles from the machine and identifies these user profiles, literally data, with the users, and this is a container that is stored on Azure, and it follows the user, so wherever the user is going to log into. So if the user is going to log into a different machine, the user's profile is going to follow him and be attached to the machine, and so the experience is going to be optimal. And this, as a consequence, brings native Office 365 performance together with, of course, the technological enhancements. And then, last but not least, there is the possibility to have, let's say, an enhancement of the quality of the audio video calling with Microsoft Teams. Because imagine if you're having a video call, this means that the audio and the video stream goes in and out from the virtual machine that sits on Azure, and then it needs to be streamed back to you where you are actually connected from your device. And this might generate some, let's say, a small delay or something. I mean, it's going to work, but the experience is not going to be exactly the same as when you are on your own physical device. But thanks to this technology, this problem is, let's say, solved by basically redirecting the audio and video directly to the machine, and the machine is going to have the possibility then to stream it to you in a native experience. So these are some of the advantages. Of course, there are others we're going to mention in a moment. If we look at the deployment of Windows Virtual Desktop, what it means is, like, we have three components, okay? We have the client all the way to the left, that gray square. That's going to give you the possibility to connect. That's on your device. Can be also a browser, as we said. Then all the way to the right, we have Azure. And Azure, like anything else on Azure, we have there the virtual machines, Active Directory, and the storage. We can store our data, our user profiles on Azure Files or on other storage kinds. And that's where our machines for Windows Virtual Desktop are going to be. And we treat them as anything else on Azure. We can put them inside virtual networks. We can create connectivity, gateways, virtual. We can create subnets. We can do anything really. We can put that behind firewalls. It doesn't matter. And then there is the Microsoft managed Windows Virtual Desktop component or layer, which is basically a software as a service layer, because all of these components that you see, web access, diagnostics, gateway, broker, and the database, these are things that if you go traditional on-premise, you need to install and manage separately and do everything by yourself. And of course, it's complex, but that's completely transparent to you. So the only thing you do is just use it. And that's Windows Virtual Desktop is going to basically be accessible from anywhere in the world. Thanks to this infrastructure, let's say this architecture. Then, if we talk about identities, there are, of course, different identity strategies. You can go for cloud, so you can go in Azure Active Directory, but you can also, use your Active Directory on premise. And you can do like sort of an hybrid setup, so you can spin up a domain controller in your Azure subscription, sync it with your domain controller on premise, and then use the one on Azure to do all the work on Azure. So basically, these are the three possibilities, and they cover most of the use case scenarios, and they all have pros and cons, of course. If we look at the user's connection flow, and this is something I want to give you an overview of because it enhances extremely the security. So when we want to connect, we go from the client, we connect to Azure Active Directory. The Active Directory returns a token. The token is then presented to the web access layer, and then the broker queries the database. You can follow the arrows. And then the user is prompted with a screen with the resources that he can access, and that's based on the user role. Okay, if you are like a developer, you will have certain desktops that's been set up for you, or applications. If you are finance employee, then you will have something else. So the user selects a resource, then the remote desktop client is going to connect to the gateway, and then the broker is going to orchestrate the connection. Now, what's important to see here is the arrow number 0. The arrow number 0 is some sort of keep alive signal that's sent always from the virtual machines toward the Windows Virtual Desktop layer, and that's going to inform the Windows Virtual Desktop layer that there is a virtual machine available, and is going to open the connection proactively from the virtual machine to the layer. So basically, this makes it possible to have no exposure to the outside world of the virtual machines ever. So those virtual machines are not accessible and not visible from the outside world, but they are accessible only by the Windows Virtual Desktop layer, because they are the ones initiating the connection, the connectivity. And this is called reverse connect technology, and gives an extremely high security, because there is an extremely low attack surface to the external world. So what we said, in fact, we have here the security overview. So Azure Active Directory brings security, because you can use all the Azure Active Directory security mechanisms like multi-factor authentication, certificate authentication, role-based access control, everything. Then there is what we said, the reverse connect technology. And then also, like when we talk about shared user sessions on the same machine, these users that, like, say, use the same machine, they don't see each other. They cannot access each other's data. So of course, each session is completely isolated and it's completely secure. Then we come to the concept of Hostpool. What's a Hostpool? A Hostpool is like a set of virtual machines that you set up that have the same image, and that image will contain all the applications and all the things that you need for your employees. And then you can decide how many virtual machines you want, and you can decide also how you want these virtual machines to scale. Okay, so imagine when we talk about scalability, you have different ways to scale them up. So you can say, okay, I want my users to connect to the virtual machines in the most performant way. So for example, all the users will connect first to the empty virtual machine. So first user to virtual machine 1, then second user to virtual machine 2, then third one to virtual machine 3, and so on. And then only when all the virtual machines contain at least one user, then the next user is going to start sharing. So start to populate the virtual machine 1, and they're going to share it with 2 users and so on. So that's called breadth algorithm. Or you can also say, no, I want to maximize the cost savings. So I'm going to put all my users into one virtual machine, sharing everything, and then only that after that I'm going to start using virtual machine 2, and only when virtual machine 2 is completely full of users, then virtual machine 3, and so on and so forth. So there is complete flexibility there. You can really put the technique or the algorithm that you like, or that makes most sense for you. So that's a host pool. And of course, the host pool has the image, and the image is basically the operating systems with all the applications and all the things installed that the users are going to use to spin up their environment. Then an important thing to mention is the difference between the full desktop and the remote applications. Okay, so imagine what we said so far means that a user is going to connect to its desktop, and its desktop is going to be a full desktop like your laptop, and you're going to see everything like the desktop background, the menu, the everything like a complete computer. You can do that, but you can also use remote applications. So you can also decide, okay, I want to take, for example, Word, Excel, and another application, and I want to put them there for my employees to access a remote application only, so that the employees, they can actually, instead of access the complete desktop, access only that application. And that application is going to look and feel it's part of your physical device that you're using, but actually that application sits on Windows Virtual Desktop, and actually all the data sits on Windows Virtual Desktop in Azure, etc. So, and it's something that you can do if you want, for example, to integrate your application on Azure with the things that you're doing on your own laptop, or for several use cases. This is, for example, how it looks like. Okay, this is like the client. So, this little window that you see there is the client that you open when you want to connect to your Windows Virtual Desktop, and you can choose. If you see where there's the mouse pointer right now, that's on a full desktop. There is another full desktop there that it's called AF with DC. And then all the other things that you say, there are remote applications. So for example, so if I double click on Ignite Desktop, I'm going to go into a full desktop, and I'm going to start using that. But if I double click on Excel, I will only use the remote app Excel, and that remote app is going to be loaded into my device, but actually will sit on Windows Virtual Desktop. So we even brought this concept one step further. Okay, so if we take the 3 main components of a compute environment, there is the operating systems, there is the applications, and there is the data. Okay, and Windows Virtual Desktop separates them. And it means that you will have the operating system in one image stored on Azure. You will have the applications, each application in one separated image stored on Azure, and then the containerized user profile data in a container like stored on Azure as well, separately. What does this mean? It means that instead of having one very big image that you need to manage and you need to give to all the users, and then for another kind of users, you need a different image, for example, with different applications. So there's going to be an image for the developers, an image for the finance department, and that gives, let's say, a lot of work to manage the image, because you need to put applications, you need to update them, etc. Instead, here you can make it much simpler, because you can have one image only and a lot of applications, and then you assign the applications necessary for each user department to the users, but you don't have to have different images. So you will have one operating system image, several application images, the users containers, and then everything is linked to users based on their role. So yeah, that's what we're saying. And so there are then three main options, okay, to summarize. Legacy, what we said, one image for everything. Then we have modern, what we have said right now, that you have this thin image, and then you have the applications containerized and dynamically mounted, and also the containerized user data. And then we have an option in between, which is like the legacy one with all the applications installed in the same image, but then you can mask the ones that are not necessary for the users. So, for example, I can have the developer applications and the finance applications installed on the same image, but I will hide the developer applications from the finance users, and I will hide the finance applications for the developer users, and so that they can all use the ones that are needed. And that is called application masking. It's also a technology available. And the other technology, the option 3 on the right, is called MSIX App Attach. These are all technology that are available on Windows Virtual Desktop, and they make the experience completely modern. And then last but not least, we have the possibility to do the same, let's say, application masking on Java. So you can have different Java versions installed on the same machine, but these Java versions can be, let's say, hidden for certain users, and so you can have multiple, and each user can use a different one. What do you pay for? Let's talk about price. Basically, you pay for the costs. You pay if you have, of course, an Azure user account and a subscription. You have to pay the compute on Azure, so you pay for the virtual machine usage for the operating system. You pay for the storage if you are storing data on Azure, of course. And that includes also the storage of the user profiles and the data and everything. And then you pay for the networking as everything else on Azure. So all the, let's say, outbound data that's flowing from Azure outside as a cost, which is always the same for every other Azure solution. So you can also take advantage of the reservations. So this means that you can have also 1-year reservations of your virtual machines or 3-year reservations, and you can all have access to all the bring your own licenses advantages as well. So if you have already licenses on premise, you can bring them on Azure. So this is a little bit of an overview of Windows Virtual Desktop. Then I will leave the word to Arjen to show how actually Citrix can integrate even more on top of Windows Virtual Desktop.
Great. Thank you very much, Francesco. Great presentation about the value of Azure, and particularly the value of WVD. I really liked your commitments for sustainability. It's good to see the road ahead. And Olivier, also thank you for inviting Citrix to this presentation. So the title of the presentation is How Citrix Workspace Can Really Add Value to Windows Virtual Desktop. So my name is Arjan Taal. I'm part of the Citrix Benelux team, and I'm focusing on further enhancing and optimizing the strategic partnership that we have between Citrix and Microsoft. And of course, we do that with the people at Citrix and people at Microsoft, but also with our valued partners. So thanks again to Telindus for being a trustful partner for us. My presentation has 3 topics. So I'll talk more about the strategic partnership that I'm really passionate about. I'll talk more about how to recharge your batteries, because that's important these days. And also I'll talk a bit about bowling, about you throwing strikes. And you know that feeling when you throw a strike with bowling, 10-pin bowling, all the pins go in one go. So that's are the 3 topics that I'll discuss today. So let's dive right into it. So first of all, we made it. It's the 1st of June 2021, and we made it through this pandemic so far, right? So your IT department has enabled you to work in a new way, remotely from home. And they did a lot of transformation, and it really accelerated all this transformation to get you to this point. The question is, this environment that you have now, this status quo, is that really good enough? Because our business leaders see that, well, more than 80% are really adopting this new flexible work. And business leaders say that, well, more than 50% of the business leaders say that they will probably increase the number of contractors. So really adding more people to the workforce for a shorter period of time, all bringing their own devices, their own workspaces, etc. So that really dramatically increases the attack surface that a company has. On the other hand, the cost of a breach of a data leak are immense. 4 million average cost, not only because of penalties, but also of the reputation, the damage that you might have on reputation. So we really have to think different about work. The assumptions that we had about work are changing, and we have to question these assumptions. So with Microsoft and Citrix, we have developed this digital workspace transformation strategy. And the strategy is all about unifying work, securing work, and simplifying work. Well, work might be a little bit boring or, well, demanding maybe. Let's talk about a nice thing. Let's talk about bowling, one of the topics that I mentioned in the beginning. You know, if you go out bowling, the funny thing about bowling is that you can do it. I mean, you probably have done it someday. You might not be a professional bowler, but sometimes you have this great feeling because you throw that ball and you hit some pins, and then you throw another ball and you hit another remaining pins, and all 10 pins are gone. And you know what that means, right? That means you have a spare, right? It's a spare. The better feeling is even if you throw a ball and you hit the 10 pins in one go. How does that feel? That's the strike. That's good. That strike, it sounds amazing. I mean, if you hear the noise of a strike, imagine if you have that feeling of sensation when you throw a strike. You know that pose that you do when you throw a strike? I always do the Usain Bolt pose. And then when I go back to my team, I do the high fives, right? That's the feeling that you'd like to have at work as well. The other thing is, not everybody is a professional bowler. So sometimes we make mistakes. Sometimes we throw a gutter ball, so a ball on the side of the lane. And especially when you have kids or even you're elderly, and that's the fun thing about bowling, you can do it with 3 generations. The kids can go, even your grandparents can go. And then we have these nice things about the side rails or bumpers that you call. So it will prevent the ball from going sideways and then at least hitting a couple of pins. That's what you should also do. So you should also secure your work by having these bumper cards. And the other thing is, some do not even have the equipment or the power to really throw that ball 18 meters away to the pins. So you have this nice construction that is like a ramp where you put on the ball like 1 meter height, and then the ball rolls down and you can aim it, and then you still get that feeling. That's the way we'd like to have work done. We would like your people to throw strikes every time they access their work. So unify work, being agile and resilient. Secure the work, really implement this zero trust approach, and simplify work. Make sure you throw strikes every time. So we do that with Microsoft, and as I said, I'm really passionate about the partnership, and that's exactly specifically because this partnership has been one of the most mature, one of the most successful partnerships in the IT history. And it all started when we added value on top of Windows Terminal Server. We made sure that Windows Terminal Server technology was accessible remotely on bandwidth that was low and high full of latency. And we made sure we could also scale it up with lots of users, where we call these things as Citrix farms. And we started calling this presentation server, WinFrame, you know these names, right? And then we also had to scale up and load balance all these servers that were needed to provision this Windows Terminal Server. And then we started doing gateway service to access remotely on a secure way with SSL certificate offloading, etc. So that's when we introduced NetScalers. So the NetScalers is a device, but it can also be an appliance, a virtual appliance. And now with cloud services, these virtual appliances also run in Azure. They can even be a containerized version of the ADC as well. So the Netscaler, then we call it Application Delivery Controller, ADCs, specifically mentioned for, well, securing apps, being virtualized Windows applications, but also the new age applications. So for DevOps environments, perfectly sound to use it. So from Xenox and desktops, Netscalers, we started introducing new technology and also acquire new companies like ShareFile and Extend Mobile to manage files, exchange and share, and also to manage mobile application management and mobile device management. And over time, we moved from perpetual licensed on a on-prem environment to a cloud service licensed with subscriptions. And then we start calling it the workspace. And that workspace is a Citrix as a service. And the latest one is to actually add intelligence on top of it. Intelligence to make it easier for the customers to consume it, easier for the end users to throw strikes, and also even better for the admins to also facilitate this new way of working and have analytics on top of it to monitor and to really take action on it. So quite a journey that we took together with Microsoft, starting with Windows Terminal Server, then adding our cloud services on top of Azure, because our cloud services is running on Azure, really accelerating the usage of Office 365 and also Teams optimization. And the latest thing that we have, and we love it, is the Windows Virtual Desktop Services, because that really says that the use case of virtual applications and virtual desktops is still there. It's just going to the public cloud. So at this moment, we have like Workspace, Cloud Services, Windows Virtual Desktop Services, which is really the sweet spot of our partnership. And Telindus has been a very loyal partner for more than 10 years. They have a platinum status and do a lot of, well, good business with us and serve you as a customer. You as a customer are not alone. We have like 400,000 joint customers worldwide, more than 110 million users, betting their business, betting their daily life on using the technology of Citrix and Microsoft together. So how do we address the needs of innovation of customers, our joint customers, Citrix and Microsoft? Simplification, right? Simplification of migrations to Azure. Simplification and acceleration, because we all know that we are in a hybrid phase. We still have on-premise workloads, and we'd like to use the Azure environment as well. So enabling that hybrid phase is key. But we also simplify remote work and collaboration, optimizing teams, native and in the virtualized environments, and also integrating with all the tools that Microsoft provides, like the Power Platform. And we increase the flexibility and really make sure that you're ready for the next disruption. All based on the three key elements that we have. It's about anyness, so it's about choice, the choice that you as a customer have. Sometimes you make the choice yourself, sometimes it's a given because you had an acquisition of a company that uses other technology than your standard technology. You would like to have that integrated in your environment as well, so you can move over time to your preferred technology. But also the experience, especially important for the end user, but also the admins. And security. We really have to raise that security and also integrate it with analytics, and also complement that with the insights of the analytics that Microsoft provides in their E5 environments. So it's really the best combination. So I mentioned there's a lot of things that we do together, Citrix and Microsoft, but let's focus on WVD, Windows Virtual Desktop. Like I said, we really like it. We really encourage you as a customer to invest time, to invest the possibilities of WVD. But also do that together with Citrix technology, because if you look at the on-prem environments with Citrix and all these components of Microsoft, and then move that to cloud services, so WVD in combination with Citrix Virtual Apps and Desktop Services, you can actually reach the savings of up to 70%. 70% over the period of 3 years. So these savings are about licenses, operations, and infrastructure. So why does Microsoft like it so much to work together with us? Because you heard this great story from Francesco about WVD. Well, WFD and Citrix really simplifies things and accelerates that journey. We can actually enable hybrid multi-cloud environments. So one control plane, Citrix as a service, by the way, running in Azure, can actually manage both on-prem workloads as well as cloud workloads. And these can be separate resource groups as well, or even if compliance reasons or legislation reasons require it, have workloads running in other public clouds as well, all managed in a single control environment, being Citrix Cloud Services. And we can also optimize these operations. So with the same number of admins, we can spin up more users, do it quicker, have quicker responses to issues resolved, and also lower the costs. Sometimes you see that, well, companies like using WFD, but need to add on third-party tooling to really get the monitoring tools or printing, etc. It's all included in the Citrix Virtualization desktop services that you get when you run it together with WFD. So it also lowers the costs. And we add performance analytics, so we can exactly see how many strikes your people go, how many spares they throw, how many splits they do, and how many gutter balls maybe even as well. But it's also delivering secure experiences. So optimizing, for example, file downloads, or optimizing the way teams work, but also securing the environments. Like I said, the bumpers on the side of the bowling alley, so you don't get that way because you have a gutter ball. It's about optimization of teams and networking. So with security analytics and performance analytics, you really have a secure experience. So we simplify and accelerate your journey to Azure. So let's talk a little bit about your batteries. So there still are people thinking about batteries that you can just replace them and buy new batteries. And every time a new battery is needed, you just put in a new battery and throw it away. You throw the old one away, but that's not really a sustainable thing, right? So why are people not using rechargeable batteries? Well, the reason is simple. If you look at the cost of batteries, when you buy them in a store, normal batteries or rechargeable batteries, which one do you think is more expensive? Well, yes, the rechargeable batteries. But you also know that common sense, if you need to have some batteries over the next, well, let's say 3 years, for example, you can recharge your batteries that you purchase once instead of really replacing it with new batteries. So it's also more cost effective. The same is true with WFD native. You add on additional cost because you need to have Citrix subscriptions, but you have a lot of operational savings, compute savings, network savings, storage savings. That means that WFD with Citrix is more cost effective than WFD native. For a population of 1,000 power users using Windows 10 multi-session, it saves up to 30% or $300K. That's a lot of batteries. So how does it look for an end user? An end user has this access to his workspace, a consumer-like access where you can just access your WFD applications or desktops with a single sign-on, multi-factor authentication, of course, and instead there's choice as well which identity provider you have. For example, Azure AD. But we go one step further. We don't only want to make sure that they throw strikes every time. Oh, there you go. Yeah, you have strikes every time you use it. You'd like to have a workspace that doesn't only allow you to access all kind of applications, being virtual or maybe even SaaS applications. You also like to have access to your files, wherever they reside, in OneDrive or maybe in your shared folders. But you also like to be notified from all the kind of actions that you need to take. And all these actions come out of what we call system of records. So for example, an HR application or travel and expense application. So instead of being directed to this SaaS application, having to log on and doing your task and then go back, which is a lot of context switching, you'll be more productive if you have an activity feed like this, where all these notifications come into your activity feed. You can view the notifications, but you can also take actions. So it's not to replace the underlying system of records. It's not to replace SAP or Salesforce or whatever you, but it's all about making it easier to use and also to make it better to leverage the technology that you already have. It's also easier for customers that have lots of users, for example, third-party contractors, which do not necessarily know which applications they need for, well, suppose they need to have a couple of days off, a PTO request. So instead of also defeat, we also have micro apps, which really do a simple task in the underlying system of records. For example, a request of a couple of days of vacation, PTO. So the workspace is something that the end user sees. Like I said, the experience is important also for the admins. And we have this analytics that runs side by side with the Microsoft Analytics tools, like Microsoft's Graph Security or Defender ATP or Intune and Sentinel. It gives a complete view of all the data points that are collected with Citrix. You can actually see who's doing the work and if they throw strikes or if they go sideways and need bumpers. You can also see the risk score and take preventive actions if the risk score comes too high. But you can also see the performance. And if you can take action on the performance when they have poor performance, you can exactly identify where the performance issue is really located. One last thing to mention, you can see the workspace, but you don't really see the flow of your traffic. And that flow of traffic was really controlled in the old days. In the old days where you have offices, branch offices, and well, we did something with SD-WAN to do a local branch breakout for branch office directed to your SaaS applications. But we don't have any insight anymore in this new situation of the remote users working from home. They are using an unprotected line from their workspace to their SaaS applications. To gain that access again, to gain control, insight, and see the limited risk, we have introduced secure internet access. And secure internet access together with SD-WAN and secure workspace access is part of the SASE solution that we have, Secure Access Services Edge. So think about Citrix more of a complete way of working with a workspace solution, including networking, and not just the old-fashioned Xen app, Xen desktop, or what we now call it Citrix Virtual Apps and Desktop Services. So, almost my last slide. We'd like you to throw strikes. We'd like you to access your applications, access your tasks, and access your desktops, your files, etc. And if you access it, it should be frictionless. It should be easy, and it should be accessible, and should be performing very well. And we like to do this with any user, if you're an employee or a contractor or a business partner, from any location. Also any device application. But also the new thing is any work type. We recently acquired a company called Reich, which has project management tooling. So any work type will also become very important. So with Citrix and Microsoft, your employees, contractors, business partners will be able to throw strikes every time and do high five with their teammates. So, final slides. My ask to you is, think about this presentation and reimagine what this means to you and to your work and what that kind of value it brings, the business value to your solution. Then contact your Telindus representative to really see what it means to you, to ask for a demo or a proof of concept, or even better, a proof of value, because that's where it's all about. And then work together with Telindus, Microsoft, and Citrix to really simplify and accelerate your journey to cloud. Olivier, back to you. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Francisco and Ariam, for this two great presentations, very clear. So, thanks for mentioning, Ariane. What could be the next step of this webinar? So, for sure, we could look behind the stage, behind the curtain, and we can demonstrate technical capabilities of all these technologies during a special session with your IT team. So show you with demonstration, but maybe we can be more efficient and proof of concept all technology presented by Francesco and Ariane in your organization to visualize the solution in a real situation. There is another trend that we can imagine and use is to take more distance from the technology and use the Telindus adoption services, where we will work together on a clear transformation plan and adoption. So it will be based on your strategy expectation, your current technical infrastructure, your potential legal constraint, in order to design together an architecture based on the strengths of the new cloud and application services presented by Microsoft and Citrix. So we are now arrived at the end of this webinar. So I would like to thank you for your participation. So in this last slide, you have all our details. So feel free to contact us if you have questions, or if you have already an account manager at Telindus, feel free to contact him or her directly. Thank you, and enjoy the rest of your day. Bye-bye.